Hello and welcome to my channel. This video is part 1 of the complete tutorial where you would be learning how to build a complete responsive website using HTML and CSS. In this video, I will be taking you through step by step on how to build the navigation menu and the home page for your portfolio website. Before we start, let's have a quick preview of our website. So let's get started. I'm on my VS Code editor where you can see I have an HTML file, a CSS file, and a couple of folders where I have the images that I would be using in this project. In the portfolio wireframe folder, you would see the screens that we would be building. These are just the wireframe or the blueprints for the various sections that we would be building in this project. Our project consists of two panels. The left panel, which is a fixed one, will contain all the navigation menu, and the right panel will contain the sections within it. So let's put the div elements for both the panels. Next, we will go into the CSS file where we will be defining the root element, which will contain the variables that we would be using throughout this project. Let's define the background color and a background color secondary for the panels. Then we will define the button color or the primary color for this project, which is shade of green, and a font color to highlight certain specific points. Next, we will define some properties by using star selector for all the elements within the document. Padding 0, margin 0, box sizing as border box, and outline as none. Let's launch the live server and back to our CSS. I'll be defining the properties for the body element, width as 100%, height as 100 viewport height, display flags, color or the background color as the background color we have defined in the root element, color as the font color we have defined in the root element, font size as 20 pixels, font family Poppins, which I have imported from the Google Fonts, and I will also be defining the scroll behavior as smooth. Next, we will define the CSS for left panel. I'll be keeping the position as fixed because the left panel does not move with the sections. Height as 90% because I do not want to utilize the entire viewport height. Background color as the secondary color we have defined in the root element. Margin 30 pixel on the top bottom, 20 pixel on the right and left. Padding 10 pixels and 20 pixels. Border radius to 50 pixel on top left, 10 pixel on top right, 10 on bottom right and 50 on the bottom left. I'll be keeping flex size as 1 and display again as flex and justify contents and align items to center so that everything within the left panel is centrally aligned, as you can see in the wireframe. Next, we will be defining the elements within the left panel. There are 4 main contents within the left panel: the image, the personal details, which contains the name, the navigation menu, and the Hire Me button. In the image, we would be adding the personal pic PNG that we have in the project folder. And in the personal details, we would just be adding a H2 element where I'll be putting the name. And I'll also be assigning a style to this H2 element where I would be assigning the font color as the button color. In the navigation menu, we'll define an unordered list with 6 list items. Let's define the button. The text or the label for the button is set as Hire Me. Let's have a look. Now we'll go to the font awesome icons to fetch the icons that we would be using for our navigation menu. I'll be searching for the home icon and putting it back into my HTML document. I'll be copying this and applying similar icons to rest of the list items, and I'll be changing them for each of the items. For About Me, Skills, Notable Work, Testimonials, and Contact Me. These are the 6 sections we would be defining in this entire project. Let's go to the CSS and define the CSS properties for each of these items. Let's start with the left panel dot image, which contains the image of the portfolio. I'll be defining position as relative, width 12 rem, height 12 rem, background color as the button color, and border radius as 50% so that it looks like a circle. Now we will be defining the CSS property for the actual image. I'll be assigning position as absolute and top to -35 pixel, left as 8 pixels, width same as the circle, height same as the circle. In the inline property of the H2 element, I would be providing a margin of 10 pixel on top so that the name is having a margin from the image and the navigation menu. Next, I will be defining properties for the navigation menu. We'll start with the unordered list. Text decoration as none and list style as none. We will define properties for the list elements. A margin of bottom to 10 pixels so that each of the list items are having a margin against each other. And within the list items, I'll be defining properties for the anchor, text decoration as none, and color as the font color. We will be defining the hover property and the active property on anchor elements so that on hovering, it changes the color. We will be defining properties for the icon within the anchor element. width as 20 pixels, height as 25 pixels, and a margin right of 10 pixels so that the icon and the text are separated. We'll define the color as similar as the button color. Next, we will be targeting the Hire Me button. We'll define the position as absolute and a bottom margin for 20 pixel, or basically the bottom and left positions of 20 pixel and 30%, width of 40% and height of 40 pixel. Background color will be the button color we have defined in the root element, and a border radius of 88 pixels. We'll also be giving a box shadow, 2 pixel horizontally, 2 pixel vertically, 2 pixel blur and 2 pixel spread. And the cursor to be changed as pointer. The font color changed to the font color defined in the root element, and the font size as 20 pixels. On hover on this button, we will be changing the font color, and also the box shadow will be changed to inset. We will also be changing the background color. Let's have a look into the browser. Our navigation menu is ready. Next, we will be targeting the right panel. Let's start by defining the properties for the right panel. Position as relative, height 90%, similar to the left panel, background color similar to the left panel. Margin of 30 pixel and 20 pixel on the top and bottom, left and right, and a margin left of 330 pixel so that the right panel and left panel do not overlap. I'll also be providing padding of 10 pixels and 20 pixel, and a border radius 10 pixel on the top left, 50 pixel on the top right, 50 on bottom right, and 10 on the bottom left. Also applied the flex size of 4 so that the right side is 4 times the left side. The display is flex, overflow as hidden, and a box shadow similar to the left panel. Let's have a look into the wireframe. Now we need to define the sections within the right panel. We'll start with the personal info section, which is the home page. We'll put the section elements for each of the sections, which we will be defining later. Let's give them a ID, personal info, about me, skills, notable work, testimonials, and contact me are the various ID of all these sections. We'll also be using this ID to anchor in the list element in the navigation menu, so that when user clicks on the navigation menu, they are directed to the correct sections. Let's have a look into the wireframe. Next, we need to define the content within the home page. We'll start with defining the hero section, which will contain the image, and the details about the portfolio owner, and a right section which will contain certain cards. For each of these two divisions within the personal info section, we'll now be defining the content. The hero section will contain the home image, which is the image of the portfolio owner, and a div element with class assigned as signature, which will contain the paragraph and the heading. Let's define the h3 element, which will contain the heading. I'll be defining the animated text section, a class of animated text. We will be animating this section later in the CSS. Now we will be defining the unordered list, which will contain the list elements with all the social links. We will be fetching the fonts or the icons for this social link again from the Font Awesome website, where we will be getting the Facebook icon, the YouTube icon, the Twitter icon, and the GitHub icon. Now we have all the content within the home page section. We will be styling this section using our CSS. First, we will define some properties for this section: a minimum width of 100% and a minimum height of 90%. Padding as 20 pixels. Vertical scrolling enabled by setting the overflow Y property as scroll. And a box sizing of content box. Next, we will be targeting the personal info section. A display set as flex, justify content, and the align item set as center. Also, we will be setting the text align as center. You can see all the items are now centered. Now we would be targeting the signature class. Let's set the flex as 2, the font color as the font color defined in the root element, padding as 10 pixels, and a font size of 15 pixels. Again, we will be setting the text align as center. Next, we will be targeting the h3 element within the signature class. We'll set the font size as 25 pixels, an align height of 35 pixels, a padding of 10 pixels on each side. Let's assign a class to the unordered list, which contain all these social icons. Let's call it as social links. Let's set the text decoration as none, list style as none, and display as flex so that all the items are horizontally placed. Margin as 20 pixels so that there is a gap between each of the items. Next, we will be targeting the list items. A margin of 0 to 20 pixel. Background color as the button color. And a width of 40 pixel and a height of 40 pixel and a border radius as 50%, which will make it as a circle. Display flex within the list element. so that we can apply centering for the icons within the elements. A justify content and text align and align items will center the icons. For the anchor elements, we'll set the color as the font color so that the icons matches the font color for the entire project. Font size as 22.5 pixel so that it looks a bit bigger. On hovering, we want to apply a scaling of 1.2 or 1.5, which will basically enlarge the social icons, and we will also apply a smooth transition to this scaling. Next, we will target the animated text. For that, we will define properties for the animated text pseudo class called before. We'll apply a content of none and a font size of 28 pixel, color similar to button color. We will be setting this content using animations, but let's try to apply a static content and have a look into the browser. Let's define the animation now. We will name the animation as animate text. At the start, we want to apply content with the name of the portfolio owner. And as the animation progresses, we want to change the content. Let's apply the animation on the animated text before pseudo element. And let's define the content as the time lapses within the animation. We'll be putting the animation as infinite. Let's change the content. A developer, a YouTuber, and a freelancer. You can see the animation is taking effect. Next, we would be targeting the card section. But before that, let's apply some important properties to the hero section. We'll be applying display as flex direction as column so that all the items within the hero sections are vertically aligned, and justify content and align items as center. In the content within the highlight section, we'll be assigning each div a class of card, and we will be having 4 such cards. Let's define the content within the card. A span containing the highlighter and a paragraph containing the description. This is how it should look like. Let's define the content. Let's go to the CSS and define the stylings. First, let's define a flex property as one for the highlight section, and a color as red, which we would be removing later, and a padding of 10 pixel, display as flex direction as column so that each of the cards are vertically aligned, and again justify content and align items as center. Next, we will be targeting the card class assigned to each of the div elements. We'll apply a margin of 15 pixel and a width of 350 pixels. Let's apply height of 100 pixel and text aligned as center, display as flex, so that the content are horizontally aligned. Justify content and align items again as center, and a background color similar to the button color, and a font color as the font color defined in the root element. We'll be defining a border radius of 8 pixels and border as none. Box shadow similar to what we have defined for the previous elements, and the cursor set to pointer. Font size as 20 pixels. We can see the home page is taking its shape, but the social links were not centrally aligned, so let's fix that. Next, we will be applying some properties to the card. On hover, we want to increase the size of the cards. Let's set the scale as 1.2. Also, let's target the span and the H2 element within the cards, so that the colors of the font on the span and the H2 elements are different. Let's apply a smooth transition to the card. We can see the home page is ready. We will be defining and styling the rest of the sections in the upcoming parts of this tutorial. Thanks for watching.